from Melbourne,
Hello from Melbourne. This is Wednesday,
January the 28th.
January 28th. We got your tape in the mail today, and we had plans to go out to dinner with some friends of ours that had me over for dinner while Carol was gone, so we were kind of reciprocating the invitation, and we're about 9:30 in the evening. We've just finished listening to your tape, and got a few comments, and Carol's got some things she wants to tell you about St. Louis after you left and before we left, and our trip back to Australia. And Carol, you got something you want to say?
Well, we took a few notes on your tape to us, and we were, of course, glad to hear from you. Like you said, you were trying to fill up the tape, and it sounds like you're settling into pretty much of a routine down there with laundry and grocery shopping and going out to dinner. I noticed that it seems like you're spending pretty much time with Goldie and Charlie. And, of course, we were interested to hear that Charlie bought a boat. That'll be an interesting experience because I know Goldie's scared to death of the water, so I was surprised to hear that they were interested in any kind of boating at all. You all left on Sunday, and our schedule in St. Louis didn't change much from the time you left. We're still on a merry-go-round, basically. Every day and night was practically filled up. Mike, I guess, worked those 3 days after you left. You left on the 28th, and I think he worked the 29th, 30th, and 31st. So those days were pretty well taken up for him because he didn't get home from work until nearly 5 o'clock every day, even though his intentions were to get home earlier. It never seemed to work out that way.
My intentions were to go into work at 9 o'clock and leave about 2:30 or 3 to come home. But when I got into the office and met all my friends and coworkers, and they knew that I was gone, it was hard to say hi and goodbye. They all wanted to know about how long I was going to be home, when we'd be back, how my wife liked it, how the kids liked it, and what everybody was like. And so every time I met somebody, it took a half hour, 45 minutes to get away.
But anyway, we enjoyed the week that we were there. Shirley and Larry had a New Year's Eve party, as you know, that we were planning on going to that. And that turned out to be real nice. We had a good time, and we had breakfast one day with Betty and Gary, and we went out to Lou and Judy's farm out at Gerald one Saturday and spent pretty much the whole day out there. We had some snow on New Year's Day in the evening, just a dusting, but it was enough to get the roads a little bit slick, and we were over at Carol and Andy's that evening, and it was a little slick coming up the hill towards Dutch Mill, getting back to the house. But nothing to speak of, but enough, as we told you, I think, on the phone, that we scraped things off a little bit. But it was nice, and we had a good time. I probably told you most of this stuff in our telephone conversation with you the night before we left. As you know, we left on the 6th, the day that you started the tape to us. Our plane was to leave, I think, at 8:30 in the morning. And we got up early. Missy spent the night with us the night before because she was going to ride to the airport, or did ride to the airport with us, so she and Sheila could come home together. And Sheila was going to stay with Missy, of course, then after that. The plane, we boarded on time, but the plane was about an hour late taking off. But that was okay. We had enough time in San Francisco to pick up some duty-free booze to take with us and change planes and do whatever was necessary, and check in for our flight, which we had gotten our boarding passes in St. Louis on the United flight out of San Francisco, and the plane evidently was quite full, and the only seats together that were available were the first row of the smoking section, which we later found out, of course, there were only 2 rows, and it was at the back of the plane, and the people who evidently were seated in non-smoking that want to smoke rotate themselves to the back of the aircraft to have their cigarettes, plus the kitchen is back there, and it's quite noisy. It was to be a non-stop flight to Hong Kong, which is 16 hours, and it seems like you're never going to get off that airplane. It's just forever and ever and ever. and it's just, I wouldn't recommend a nonstop flight for that length of time if you could avoid it. It turned out this was not a nonstop flight because we're told at this time of the year they can rarely make it on fuel all the way. And we stopped in Taipei, Formosa, but only to refuel. We were on the ground about 40 minutes. So we weren't allowed to get off the aircraft, which was much to our dismay because we would have liked to have just gotten out of that environment, even if just for a little while.
We had a terrible time getting up to the airport. We started out and came across Highway 40 to north or east 270, and we got to about Dorset Road, and the traffic was dead stop. And we waited in the traffic line, which would exit onto eastbound 70 for about 15 minutes, and we only moved about 50 yards. So we pulled back out on 270 and went down the Natural Bridge and kind of wormed our way over to the frontage road at the airport. And like Carol said, after we got to the airport and we were worried about checking in because we were down to about an hour, the plane boarded on time, but once we got aboard, we waited an hour because, like Jack, you said you had read in the paper, TWA baggage handling has been a problem, and the captain came on at least 3 or 4 times and said we were still installing baggage into the cargo department, cargo area, so please bear with us, and we would get off as soon as we could. So it was a Lockheed L-1011, one of the big wide-body jets, but it didn't seem, there weren't any people coming on late. Now, we sat on the airplane for an hour, and you would have thought that they would have had all of our baggage an hour before, but it just took them forever to get it loaded. They either need to hire some more people, or the people they have they need to make more efficient.
But after the long flight to Hong Kong, we finally managed to land in Hong Kong, and I think we probably weren't more than maybe an hour late, hour and 40 minutes late, something like that.
They had made up a lot of time.
It really wasn't too bad. We were due in there at 5:40, 19:40, which is 7:40 in the evening, and I guess we got in about 9. We were met at the airport. We had prearranged what they call meet and greet. I know that you are aware of what that is, but we were met by the local travel service that was supposed to meet us. They had a card held up with our name on it, and they met us and gathered up our bags after we went through customs, which we had no problems with at all. We came right on through without any problems. They checked the immigration papers, and you get to be real good at handling all that stuff after a while. You know just what they need because you filled out the necessary forms on the aircraft prior to landing.
At that point, we had 3 bags and 2 carry-ons.
Right.
Plus a briefcase and a camera case.
And so we were met and picked up in a white Mercedes, loaded our luggage in the back, and took us, I guess, about 20 minutes or so to get to the hotel, which was called the Holiday Inn Golden Mile, and it's on Nathan Road in Hong Kong. And the reason it's called Golden Mile is because there is a mile of nothing but very commercialized tourist shopping lining both sides of the street, several stories high. Hong Kong, at a first glance, of course, it was night when we landed there, and the lights of the city are just absolutely magnificent. The Chinese love neon lights, and every picture or movie or photograph perhaps that you've ever seen of any place in Asia with lots of neon lights flashing is exactly what is there. You land on a runway that comes right down over the water practically, and it's really a spectacular sight. He took us to our hotel and saw to it that we got our bags up to our room, and told us that he arranged to meet us the next morning at 8:30. We didn't really know what was coming from that. We were a little afraid they were going to try to talk us into something perhaps that we didn't want to do, but it turned out that he really just wanted to answer any questions that we might have. We told him the places that we had thought we wanted to see that I had read about or heard about, and he kind of gave us a little 15-minute walking tour of how to get to the ferry over to Hong Kong Island. It's the mainland is called Kowloon, and Hong Kong Island is about a 10-minute ferry ride across the bay. But Kowloon is actually considered Hong Kong. It's all part of one thing. It was a British country in 1999. It will be turned back over to China. So there's a lot of speculation going on right now with what's going to happen. Apparently, the agreement is that the people there will have a choice of either having British passports and citizenship or Chinese. So a lot of the Chinese people themselves don't want to become part of China, and they're concerned about living in Hong Kong for the restrictions that might be placed on them, so they're looking for ways to get out themselves. He was helpful, very helpful. Our guide, I think his name was Henry at that point.
Yes.
We had several, but he was the first. He did arrange a tour for us on a Chinese junk to a big restaurant called the Jumbo Restaurant, which is the largest floating restaurant in Hong Kong, I guess.
And they must have 3 million lights on it.
And we have photographs of that, of course. We didn't get double prints on most of our things because we had our film developed, most of it in Thailand, and that was not available at that point. So we'll try to pick out a few that you might be interested in and have prints made and send them to you at this point, and then later you can see them all. Hong Kong was Mike's favorite of every place that we visited. It
A
was
little scary, a little dirty, but there was more tourist things to do, and it was more unusual to me than the other places we were.
As I said, we took a nighttime cruise on a Chinese junk out to this restaurant and had a Chinese meal. We've had about as much Asian food as we want for a while because that's all we ate practically for 2 weeks. But it was quite an exciting place. The shopping was absolutely wonderful. Mike bought a new lens for his camera and a new flash pack. And I bought some gold.
A lot of gold.
Bought a couple of watches. A birthday present for Sheila. Tons of T-shirts we bought for the kids. We were just stuffing our suitcases full and didn't really realize it. On Friday, we took a day trip, which we had prearranged into mainland China, the southern part of mainland China. We were picked up and taken to a hydrofoil port where we traveled 45 minutes by hydrofoil to Macau, which is a Portuguese area off of Hong Kong. And from there we picked up a bus and went into mainland China, spent the day in China, had lunch in China. I did send you a postcard from there. I didn't have your address in Florida with me, so I sent it to Rustic View. I'm sure by now you've gotten it. At least I hope you have.
We mailed it from there rather than to carry the postcard back to our motel where we had your address because we wanted it postmarked in China.
And so that was an interesting trip. It's quite depressing in China. Poverty abounds. I didn't really realize that there was anything like that still existing in the world. They do all of their farming by water buffalo and a man and a plow. They don't have any mechanized equipment there whatsoever. Rice is their main crop and their main export, their main food. That's the only livelihood that they have, so to speak.
On the market.
They are government supported, basically. They are only allowed to have one child. That's the way they're controlling their population. If they have more children than that, their government support is taken away, and if a man has a job in the factory, his job is taken away. So the punishment is pretty stiff. We never really ask if they have a means of sterilization or birth control, but I'm sure they must. We had lunch at a nice resort in China that was nice. After that, we stopped at a Chinese kindergarten where the children are, it's like a daycare center, and the children are immaculate and just darling, and they sang little songs for us, and they were just getting up from their nap, and it was really, that was the best part of it as far as not being depressing. The children are just as cute as can be. We stopped at a local farmer's market where I picked up a few pieces of Chinese porcelain. In this same market, we also saw a dog, D-O-G, butcher shop. I hope I never see one again as long as I live. The dog was skinned, head and all, and lying there being cut up, dead, of course. Apparently they eat it.
Chops
I
and
didn't have any for lunch.
ribs and snout.
The thought of that absolutely nauseated me. But then, of course, we had the 45-minute hydrofoil ride back to Hong Kong.
On the way back was a hovercraft.
Hovercraft, right. But we went out every day and every night in Hong Kong. We took the ferry from Kowloon to Hong Kong Island a couple of times. It cost 50 Hong Kong cents, and the exchange rate was 7.8 to 1. So that works out to be somewhere around 7 cents for a ride on this ferry, which takes about 10 minutes across the harbor.
Tell them about the
I did, in
experience on the
fact, ride in a
rickshaw.
rickshaw. Rickshaws are not alive and well in the Orient any longer. However, there are still a few old men on Hong Kong Island who, for the tourists, have rickshaws. We got off the ferry the first time, and they come running up to you with their coolie hats on, just like you'd imagine, and want to take you for a ride. We were told to prearrange the price with them. We tried doing that. They kept saying, up to you, and finally, before we knew it, we were each in a rickshaw and on our way for a ride around a very, very long block. We took our photographs, as you mentioned. I took one of Mike and he took one of me, and we said how much, and about as fast as we said that, he said $500, Hong Kong dollars, which again, when you translate it, comes out to be about $70. And we said, wait a minute, that's way too much. It was about a 15-minute ride.
Yeah, we had figured about 50 Hong Kong dollars a piece, which would have been about $7.50 a piece.
Which still, the guy was making $50 an hour by U.S. standards, and hardly anybody in the U.S. makes that. So we bargained with them, and we're out of the rickshaw and getting very upset, and Mike took two $50 Hong Kong bills out, and
With my intention to give 50 to Carol's driver and 50 to my driver, and while I was still trying to argue with them that 50 is all, they had come down to 100 by that point, and when I got ready to separate the $50 bills, Carol's driver grabbed them both and ran away. And my rickshaw driver had me by the arm and said, you give me 100, you give me 100. And I said, he's got your money, go after him, he's got your money. And he said, you owe me 100, you owe me 100, you owe me 100. I said, I jerked my arm away and I said, he's got your money, go after him. He said, he grabbed my arm back again, he said, you owe me, you give me, you give me. And I said, he's got your money, and if you don't like it, call the police. I'm tired of arguing with you. You call the police, you call the police. Well, all this work, this rickshaw ride is done around the bus station, and there was taxi cabs all lined up on the other side of the street, and we had an audience, about 20 cab drivers.
and I'd already walked
By
away.
this time, Carol had walked away, and this guy had my arm. He's actually squeezing my arm and said, you owe me $100, you owe me $100. And I finally, the third time, just jerked my arm away, and I said, call the damn police, I don't care. I said, he's got your money, you go after him. And then I walked away. And the guy kind of looked kind of dumb there and just let us go after that. But that wasn't a very good experience for our first encounter in Hong Kong. But after that, things got better.
And we did learn from that. You do have to bargain with them. They expect you to bargain with them. And you have to just have a price in your mind and walk away. And if they can come down to your price, they'll come down. And if they can't, they won't. They'll let you walk out. We went up to Victoria Peak, which is on Hong Kong Island. We took a tram up, a very, very steep tram up.
Not as steep as the one going up Pikes Peak, but
And
not as long.
that's magnificent views from up there. We went out to a Chinese restaurant on our own.
We didn't eat in the hotel at all that time.
No, we didn't eat in the hotel at all. But Hong Kong was an exciting place. We enjoyed every minute of it, and we have lots of pictures and lots of memories. And anyway, we were on our way then. That morning, on Sunday, January the 11th, we left Hong Kong for Bangkok.
Well, tell them about the People's Market that we went to. There's a lot of...
I forgot that. Mike said I was going to forget things as I went along. There's a couple of, back to Hong Kong again, there's several open-air markets. One's a night market. It's called Temple Street Market,
Where most of the tourists go.
where most of the tourists go, and they have wires to set the lights up, and they cook all kinds of food on the street.
If it ever rained, there'd be a multi-electrocution because they have bundles of wires that look like spaghetti strung across television antennas. Just anything they could use, ropes or metal rods to make a roof. They did that and strung canvas and cotton drapes across it. And if it ever rained, I'm sure everybody around would be electrocuted.
But we walked through there. We didn't buy anything that night. It was terribly crowded, shoulder to shoulder people. As we left, we walked up the back alley and we saw people sewing designer labels in blue jeans.
Instant alterations and instant designer jeans.
If you need your pants shortened, you buy them there. They got sewing machines set up. They cut them off and fix them for you right on the spot.
And sew on the Levi label.
And sew the label in, that's right. There's another market on Hong Kong Island called Stanley Market, which we liked a lot better.
Which is more of a people's market, the local market.
Yeah, and it's a lot of permanent stall type places, kind of like the flea market where there are a lot of permanent stores that are set up all the time.
Tell her some about some of the souvenirs out there.
Oh,
It's at the Stanley Market.
at Stanley Market,
Prices were better. You didn't have pretty much a one price, not much bartering.
we bought Mike and Randy and Cheryl each a happy coat, you know, the kind of robe things they have in Fiji. We bought some of the oriental type jewelry cases that fold up and tie up.
Robin's.
We bought a fan for Robin that the girl did calligraphy. She put her name on it in Chinese and in English and the date and put her stamp on it, the artist that did it.
See, that was 200 Hong Kong dollars or 225 Hong Kong dollars.
What was?
The fan.
Oh no, oh, I don't know what I figured it
Turned
out
out to be
as.
about 75
about-
cents.
It was about 15 Hong Kong dollars, I think, something like that.
I'm thinking box.
Yeah, but anyway, the markets were really fun. We enjoyed those, and we did a lot of walking. We didn't take a cab anywhere there. We did take the ferry, and we took the bus. They have double-decker buses and double-decker trams there. They have an underground railway system that runs 2 levels underground, and we used that. We used that to get to an area where the local shop, which is called Mong Tok, and that's where Mike bought his camera and lens. There. The underground's very clean. The train system's really good in Hong Kong.
You've seen it here in Melbourne, how the kids have come along and written graffiti and 4-letter words and their names and Susan loves John and Carol loves Mike and all that kind of stuff. Well, you didn't see that so much in Hong Kong. All of the billboards and the train stations and subway stations were really clean, and you had no apprehensions about going down into the subway at all.
And that was a real cheap way to get around, too. Everything seemed really cheap there to us. We did have breakfast at McDonald's one morning, and it was something like 32 Hong Kong dollars or something like that. That
And they
seems
have
weird to pay that. And they have standard American type food.
Egg McMuffin and grape jelly and Big
Yeah,
Macs and
pretty
quarter
much
pounders.
everything that you can imagine. We had a lot of fun in Hong Kong. That was our first experience in Asia, and we were really proud of ourselves that we did as well as we did.
And the hotel was a 4 or 5 star hotel. Everything was just A1, A-ship shape there. We had no, we even had an extension in the bathroom.
A phone extension
Phone
in the
extension
bathroom.
bathroom.
Not that we used the phone, we didn't. But we really did have a nice time there, and I see now as I'm talking to you that I think you're right. I'm probably going to be able to fill up a couple of tapes to you. So if I only get you through part of this trip on this tape, I'll put
We'll
another
draw-
one in the recorder and
We'll draw a line and keep going.
keep going, because I think we're about through with side one according to Mike's calculations here.
We got 100 clicks left.
Oh, we still have a little bit. Well, anyway, we got picked up again to go off to the airport to leave for Bangkok on Sunday. The plane left at 11:45. We went to the airport in Hong Kong and checked our suitcases in and had no problems whatsoever. I think by now we've picked up another carry-on as we are traveling along. We're still in 3 suitcases,
3
though.
suitcases and 3 carry-ons.
3 carry-ons now. But we're on China Airlines. First time for him on an Airbus. It's an aircraft that he had read about, known
British
about,
Aerospace.
British Aerospace, but had never flown on it. It was a very nice airline. We had no problems. We took off on time. Everything went slick. We went to Bangkok, and we landed there. I think it was about a 2.5 or 3 hour flight, and we
That's
came.
where we were upgraded to, I think.
No, not there.
Okay.
That was China Airlines. We were not upgraded. But we got into Bangkok, and again, everything was swell. We got picked up.
Meet and greet.
Meet and greet again. The guy was there to meet us and to take our luggage and to inform us as much as he could on what was going on. The money now in Thailand is called baht, B-A-H-T, and the exchange rate is 25 to 1. So, 25 baht is $1. 100 baht is $4. So you really have to think now about how much you're spending on things.
How about my camera?
Mike's got a calculator that Chuck and Bev, when they were here, gave him that really came in handy for us. He could punch in the foreign currency exchange rate as a constant, and whatever we wanted to know what it was, he just punched in 100 or whatever and hit foreign currency
And it would tell us then what it was in American
in
dollars.
U.S. dollars.
Or some of the places, like in the jewelry store, said, well, this is 100 American dollars, and then we could convert it back to
Local
bahts,
currency.
because that's the money that we had in our wallet.
So it was interesting because every 3 or 4 days we changed currency.
Well, what did we go through? We went Hong Kong dollars,
Yeah, we went
Bangkok,
from U.S. to Hong Kong.
U.S. to, well, we
baht.
went Australian to Fiji to U.S. dollars to Hong Kong dollars
To baht,
to bahts
to
to
Singapore,
Singapore dollars
back to Australia.
back to Australian dollars.
Right, so we went through a lot of currency, and so you had to be thinking all the time where you were. But Mike says I'm almost out of clicks, so I guess I won't tell you much more stories, except that we had a sort of an uneventful ride to the hotel now called the Indra, I-N-D-R Regent in Bangkok, Thailand.
5-star hotel.
5-star hotel. Again, they took us right in the door, got us checked in, showed us where the travel desk was if we wanted to book any tours, because we had to be thinking pretty fast now because we only had 2 nights in Bangkok, and if there was anything we wanted to do, we had to get it out underneath. So we got checked into our hotel room, walked out on the street through a shopping. The street vendors come out about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's about the time we arrived in Thailand. So we took a walk up the street just to see what was available, and I couldn't believe it. The shopping was so cheap there. It was just unbelievable.
The same date, January the 28th, Wednesday, 1987, and it's 10:24 in the evening, Australia time. And we want to continue now on side two, the trip in Bangkok.
So we took a walk down the street. They just absolutely pester you to death to buy things. They just come out and practically drag you in. But the street vendors are all have their little stalls up and down the street.
Good. It was.
They are not actually set up in the street. They're on the sidewalk, and it's just terribly crowded. You can hardly walk through. They have 100% cotton Izod copies. They tell you they're copies. In Thailand, they don't try to sell you anything that isn't real.
Almost originals.
Almost originals, but they tell you they're copies. They're for sale for 50 baht, which is $2 US. In the end, I bought 4 of those, different colors. I've washed them. They wash beautifully. They don't shrink an ounce. I should have bought more, but I didn't have room. Mike bought, I think, 2 belts, leather belts for $1 a piece. I bought the girls each a Gucci copy handbag for $10 a piece. It's just absolutely a shopper's paradise. Everything is so cheap, it's unbelievable. Anyway, the traffic in Bangkok is, I can't even describe it. It's as bad as anything I think I've ever seen. And granted, I haven't been a lot of places, but I have never seen... Oh, it's much worse than Manchester Road. If they have 4 lanes of traffic marked, they will be 5 cars wide with motorcycles running in between. It's just incredible. And they are aggressive, and they honk their horns, and they won't let you in. It is... I wouldn't drive there if you paid me. They have these little taxis, I guess you call them. They call them tuk-tuks. T-O-O-K-T-O-O-K-S, tuk-tuks. And they're little motorcycle-like things with a carriage on the back that'll hold two people, but sometimes they fit 6 in. In Bangkok, we saw 4 people on a motorcycle. Just unbelievable. Mike and our entertainment was to stand on the crosswalk, which, by the way, goes over the highway.
Because you can't walk across it.
Because you wouldn't dare you take your life in your hands to cross it. We'd stand up there and watch the traffic. It was just incredible. We made arrangements the very first night that we were there to see a Thai dancing show, which was at the hotel. And it was a dinner show.
Dinner dance show.
It was a dinner show with the show. I think it cost us $10 or $12 a person, including the meal and the show, in the hotel. We have pictures of that. They do lots of dances according to their mythology. One is called the fingernail dance, where they have long gold extensions on their fingernails, and the Thai dancers just can bend their fingers almost completely backwards, and the costumes are just magnificent, all jeweled and beads and sequins and gold and beautiful colors. Even the photographs that we have don't really do them justice. And the Thai women are just beautiful. Their skin is gorgeous, and they're really, really beautiful women. We made arrangements the next morning to take a all-day bus trip of what's called the Floating Market and the Rose Garden, with lunch included. We got to see a salt field where they flood the fields with salt water, and then the sun evaporates the water off, and they pile the salt up till the water all drains out of it. There's only one floating market left in Thailand, and it's about 2 hours outside of Bangkok. You take a boat into what they call a long-tailed boat. It's like a very long canoe, John boat type thing with a long, probably 6 or 8 foot shaft on it with a propeller propeller on the end.
Motor sitting on top of the
And
boat.
the motor's sitting on top of the boat, actually inside the boat. They take you by boat down to these canals. Bangkok was at one time called Little Venice. It was a city of canals. Many of the canals have been covered up now to make way for the roads. They still need some improvement on that. But the floating market, the Thai people actually sell their wares from boats, and many times it's their own means of marketing. They exchange goods among one another with no money ever changing hands.
Vegetables for meat, seed for
Eggs,
eggs.
chickens, everything you can imagine. Alongside the floating market, there is a market on the land, of course, where
for the tourists.
for the
mostly.
tourists mostly. We saw a snake show on this trip. We saw two little girls at a rest point where we stopped. They couldn't have been over 5 or 6 years old, and they had big snakes wrapped around their necks, and they were all made up real pretty, and they had a sign hanging on that said, photo 10 baht. Mike took some pictures along the canals of people scraping labels off of beer bottles by hand for recycling. The canals are filthy, dirty, muddy, and it's not a very clean place, but the people are wonderful in Thailand. It's a very delightful place to be as far as it's much nicer than Hong Kong as far as that's concerned. There are many Buddhist temples in Bangkok. The country is primarily Buddhist. We stopped at one where they believe that if you pound gold leaf onto the statue, whatever the statue is, that they pray to these and they bring incense and flowers. And
Each statue represents motherhood or young children or old people or mother or father or grandparents, and whatever your particular desires are, you go to that Buddha statue and you rub on $25 worth of 24-karat gold leaf, and their belief is that then that will enrich the spirits, and whatever you are praying for then will the spirits will help you in that endeavor.
anyway, we got to stop and spend a little bit of time at one of the temples along our bus tour, and then we made our way to what's called the Rose Garden, and we had a nice lunch there. Of course, we met some very nice people on the tour. The Rose Garden also, the gardens are beautiful. There's a hotel there, and they have all different species of roses, and they're really magnificent. It was here that we got to ride on an elephant. It was a short ride, but it was an interesting ride. They have a Thai cultural show there where they demonstrate the Thai dancing and Thai boxing, cockfighting, which also goes on in Thailand, and they do bet on it, and it's legal. They bet on Thai boxing. It's their national sport. It's kickboxing. Daddy, maybe you've seen it on cable. We saw the elephants work, how they work the logs, and
Pull them and get them out of the river, stuff like that. Use their trunks and their heads.
And then the next day, the day that we actually were leaving Bangkok, we took a private tour because the group tour didn't work out for us as far as time was concerned.
Catch the airplane, yeah.
To the Royal Grand Palace, which was the palace built by King Rama V of Thailand. The ruling king now is Rama IX, so they rule until their death, of course, and then their son or daughter now, that's just recently been changed, could take over. The palace is no longer in use in that no one lives there, but they do use it for ceremonial functions, and there are many examples of different types of architecture, Thai and Chinese, and lots of...
And there's a guest house there for VIPs that come in. They will let them stay at a guest house which is adjacent to the Grand Palace.
But it is just absolutely magnificent and certainly well worth seeing. We spent the morning doing that and got back in time to be transferred by bus to what we call our R&R part of the trip, which was Pattaya in Thailand. Also about a 2-hour bus ride from Bangkok.
Through some real poor areas.
Through some poor is, but on a dual road, which was one of the first ones that we had seen in a while. Pattaya is southwest of
100
Bangkok,
miles.
about 100 miles, 100 k's southwest. And our hotel accommodations there, oh, by the way, in Bangkok or in Thailand, our hotel for about $40 or $50 a night included our breakfast.
In a 5-star hotel.
In a five-star hotel. In Pattaya, we stayed at a hotel called the Montien. All the rooms have ocean views. It is on the bay. They overlook a beautiful pool and garden area and a fish pond with a huge big goldfish in them. The breakfasts there were wonderful. They had a lovely restaurant in which we did in fact eat our meals because it's a little risky to eat away from the major hotels, and we so far had not gotten sick and didn't want to. Prostitution's alive and well in Thailand. In Bangkok, Mike had an offer to go see a,
True Malaysian show.
but
And I didn't know what that meant, but when I got back to work, they said you should have went. Should have gone.
anyway, we had dinner and got checked in and had dinner and walked around the hotel and kind of got ourselves oriented and decided to take a walk down the street a little ways, and we ended up in an area what's called South Pattaya, which I guess maybe was a mile and a half down the road.
About a mile and a half, yeah.
Yes. We really didn't know we were going to end up there, but we were looking for a restaurant which had been recommended, and we found out later that we had walked the wrong way on the beach. But anyway, we got into a heavily populated area, and there's a lot of little, what they call beer bars all along the strip there, and every one, which couldn't have been probably more than 20 feet long probably, had about 15 or 20 girls working in it. And
I told Carol, I said, look at all these bars here and all those waitresses. I said, they really must get busy later on this afternoon. And she'd already read the tourist magazine that said that these girls were here to serve you and to make your stay in Pattaya as comfortable and memorable and enjoyable as possible. And I didn't know that. I just thought they were waitresses.
So he thought it would be a good idea if he went back down there by himself and checked things out.
Well, Carol's always wanted to know what's going on, so I told her I'd let her know what was going on, but that didn't go over so big.
No, I told him that I didn't think I wanted to catch anything that he might bring home. So that was our understanding, and that wasn't a problem after that. Anyway, that turned out to be probably my most favorite spot, just because we didn't plan any tours. We didn't have anything really pressing. The beach was there. It was obvious that Mike was going to get to parasail if he wanted to.
They had about 8 little areas there along the mile-long beach, different native groups there that offered parasailing.
So he got to parasail, and so did I. He liked it a whole lot more than I did.
That was really funny. We were walking our way back up to the hotel along the beach highway, and there's about, like I said, there's quite a few places that offered parasail, and by this time we were used to bartering for price. And I think we started out about 300 baht, and somebody else was charging 275, and somebody 250 and 225, and we got to the group of people, natives, that were right across from the hotel, and they said 200 baht, which is about $7 US. And I said, well, okay, that sounds pretty good. We'll come back in about an hour. I want to go back and put my swimming trunks on, and we'll do it. He said, oh, you don't need to do that. I had shorts and a t-shirt on. He said, just take your shoes off and your wallet out. And he said, you won't have to worry. You won't get wet. We start on the sand, and you'll come back, and the driver will drop you on the sand. So before I knew it, they had the harness on me, and it was a pretty windy afternoon, and the parachute, when they fluffed it up, gathered air and was fully blossomed right on the shore there. So he said, run towards the water, which was about 20 feet away, and he said the boat driver will give it the gas, and before you get to the water, you'll be up in the air. So I ran about 5 steps, and pretty soon, just like he said, I started up in the air, and I guess I went 60, 70 feet in the air, and it was a 10-minute parasail ride. He took me out into the bay and turned around and came back in, and he went parallel with the beach and kept an eye on me, and then as I settled down, I was about 20 feet outside the water towards the beach, and when I landed, the 4 guys that set me off were there to grab me so I didn't fall and to collapse the parachute so it wouldn't drag, and the whole time I was gone, they were trying to talk Carol into going, and she said, no, I'm not interested, I just wanted to take pictures of my husband while he was up. And when I landed, I told Carol, I said, you should try it, it's a lot of fun, and she said, no, I don't want to, and I said, oh, come on, it's a lot of fun, and before we knew it, they had taken the harness off of me and strapped it on her and gave the boat driver the sign, and she took off. But something happened after that. She got out about 30 feet over the water, and she started coming back down to the water, and she was getting closer and closer and closer, and she was with about 5 feet on the top of the water, and she tucked her feet under her, and evidently the boat driver killed his engine or didn't get it in gear or something, and just about the time her feet and knees touched, he got it back in gear, got the engine started, and boom, she went back up in the air, and she went around for her 10-minute ride, and when she got back to the shore and landed, her voice was quivering. I'm so mad at you, I'm never going to talk to you again.
Wasn't that bad?
She was nervous and
I was
upset.
scared, though. I didn't like being up that high, flying around in that parachute. But I did it. I did it, and Mike took pictures for all to see.
Because Randy and Sheila won't believe it.
So anyway, I did that. And they have these little scooter boats that have a little outboard on them.
They're like a motorcycle with an outboard motor on the back end that you sit on and you steer like a motorcycle.
So Mike made arrangements with them for the next morning to do that. That was $200 baht, another $7 or $8
$250
for an hour. And the USS St. Louis, the Navy ship, coincidentally, was parked in the harbor, or docked in the harbor, or anchored in the harbor. And he just was dying to get out there with his camera and try to take a picture of that. So the next morning, which was the day we were to leave at noon.
Yeah, after breakfast, we got there about 9 o'clock.
Right, and I walked down to the beach with him, just with the camera. I was going to take his picture and then go back up to the pool. And when we got there and got all arranged for him, there was a girl there that said, how about a manicure? How about a manicure? And I said, how much? And she said, 50 baht. I said, I'm doing that. That's $2. So I took pictures, and then the rest of the hour I sat there, and she gave me a manicure and a pedicure and a leg massage.
And rented a chair.
And rented a chair for $4. And it took her an hour to do all that.
I went out alongside the Navy ship SS St. Louis and drove around my little scooter boat all around the outside. And of course, as you know, Jack, the names are written on the stern of the boat. So I had my camera with me, and I kind of kept idling up until I had the whole back of the ship focused in the camera. So when the picture turned out, it would be as big as possible. So I took my 2 pictures, and just after I clicked the second picture, a big loud voice came over the PA system of the American ship and said, no small boats allowed alongside. So I guess I could have said I don't understand English, but I did, so I just waved and said okay and turned my little scooter boat around and then headed out. But he did wait long enough for me to get my picture of the sign.
Well, then that was the that, we didn't have very much time. We sat by the pool maybe for another 15 or 20 minutes and decided we better try to get our things packed up because we were to be picked up at 12 o'clock by private car for the 2-hour drive back to Bangkok Airport
And we had
for a
come
4
down.
o'clock plane.
We had come down on the tourist bus, but our itinerary said that we would go back in a private coach,
Private car.
private
said.
car.
So we got all packed up, checked out, and saw the tour bus come and go, and the private car never showed up. This was our first and only mishap of the whole trip. And I was losing it. I knew we were going to miss that airplane,
We had
and
a 2-hour ride from that hotel to the Bangkok airport.
I just knew we were going to miss that airplane, and the rest of our plans were going to be all screwed up. And the girl from the tour company, they had an office in the hotel, but she wasn't there. And it was now getting on to 1 o'clock, and the Thai people do not speak English very well. By the way, in Hong Kong, it's not a real problem in the hotels or the shops. The Chinese people don't speak English. They read it and they write it, but they don't speak it. In Thailand, you just almost can't make yourself understood. It's very difficult. And I was trying, Mike and I were both trying to make ourselves understood, and we weren't getting anywhere. Finally, at 1:17, the tour people's rep came in, said that she had tried to phone us the night before to tell us that we were supposed to have taken the bus that appeared at noon, but didn't leave a message for us because she thought she'd get us in the morning, and she was sick that morning, so she didn't come into work, but nor did she call us. So it took them about 15 minutes to get us a car. And we started on our marathon ride to the airport, which was indeed a marathon ride. But we arrived at the airport about 20 minutes before flight time. And with 3 bags and 4 carry-ons now. We are now picking up
Plus
some luggage.
the briefcase, purse, and camera.
Right. And we got there, and they said we were overweight, and we were going to have to pay excess baggage, and we were going to miss the plane, we thought. We said, please hold the airplane. And they said, don't worry, we'll hold the plane, but you're going to have to pay excess baggage. And we just kept pleading insanity and talking fast and saying we didn't
We don't
understand them.
We left Melbourne with 4 suitcases.
We just don't understand, and there was a Qantas rep behind the desk who happened to be in our corner. And finally, they just kind of threw their hands up and said,
Go and get on.
get on the plane, we'll put the luggage on. So we caught the bus out to the airplane because there was a shuttle now out to the airplane. In Bangkok, they don't have the things that come up, they don't have gates that come up to the terminal because they're building a huge, huge airport
And
there.
this airport is too small to have all the planes pull up to a concourse. So you board a passenger bus and you take the bus out into the taxi strip to the airplane.
So we got on the plane, frazzled, only to find out that they had upgraded us to business class. And the guy said, would you like a glass of juice or some champagne? And we both had a glass of champagne before we took off, and it was a real nice
We
flight.
had 8 minutes to spare.
Right, but it took off on time, so if we'd have been any later, we wouldn't have made it. But in fact, we did make it. And that was the only mishap, and of course it wasn't our travel agent's fault, it was the fault of the people in Pattaya. But I love Thailand. That was my favorite place because I think I like the people there, and it's by far the cheapest place that we were in to shop. The flight to Singapore was nice. We landed in Singapore, and on Thursday, January the 15th, we landed in Singapore, about 7:15 in the evening. Again, we were met at the airport. We were transferred to the Holiday Inn Royale on Scotts and Orchard Road in Singapore by minivan. And it was, Singapore is, I don't know where we are on the tape, so maybe I won't even start to tell you about Singapore. But Singapore was probably our least favorite of all the places, and not because it isn't nice. It is squeaky clean, ultra modern, many, many high rises. You could have been anywhere in the United States in any modern city in Singapore. You walk out of your hotel and there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken, a McDonald's, a Swenson's ice cream, a Hardee's, you name it, and it was there. Across the street from us was the Hyatt, down the street was the Hilton, somewhere else was the Sheraton. It's just immaculately clean. They control their traffic. 80% of the people live in government-owned, high-rise, high-rise housing. They have only saved about 3 streets, about 4 blocks long each, of old Singapore. So there is hardly any of the old Chinese settlement left there. They've reclaimed a lot of the oceanfront property where there was buildings that were torn down. They've filled it in, and they've built magnificent hotels and restaurants, and just everything you can possibly imagine is in Singapore, but it's ultra modern. And we liked it, but it was our least favorite only because it wasn't a different culture. We did a little shopping there. Again, we were in a 5-star hotel.
Prices weren't as good though in the shopping because Hong Kong is good for electrical and camera stuff, and Bangkok is good for clothes
And jewelry and
and
leather.
tailored clothes and leather. And Singapore was 20-30% higher on all those items.
And we were getting pretty burned out on shopping by the time we got to Singapore.
And broke.
I did buy a pair of shoes in Singapore. Shoes seem to be pretty cheap in Singapore, and I only bought 1 pair, and I should have bought more, but I didn't. We knew at this point that we were going to be overweight the next time we boarded the aircraft, so we started making arrangements to ship a bag or 2, whatever was necessary, back to Melbourne by air cargo, because it cost $20 a kilo, and we were now about 40 kilos overweight. The airlines seem to agree to take an extra 20, but they won't take an extra 40. So we walked around Singapore the first night we were there because it was evening and the shops were all closed when we got there. We did some walking around, kind of got our bearings. The next morning, my friend here in Melbourne, Sayun, who did the leaf paintings and the aprons and stuff, is from Singapore and has some friends who still live there who I had their name. We phoned them and made arrangements to have dinner with them that night. We took a city tour that afternoon so that we could see what was going on around the city. And that was informative. It was only 3 hours, so it didn't take up a lot of our time. We bought T-shirts, more T-shirts for the kids, just so that everybody could have a little something from each place we went. Randy phoned us in Singapore on his birthday. It was kind of like deja vu. I had set the alarm to get up and call him, and I was standing at the phone with his number in my hand when the phone rang. And so it was nice to talk to him. And we did, in fact, go out to dinner with Sayun's friends, and they were a lovely couple. They took us to a seafood garden restaurant by the sea, and she ordered the primary language in Singapore is English. The secondary language is Mandarin. She speaks Mandarin, and most of the people do there as well. She asked us what we like to eat, but ordered our food in Mandarin. Quite honestly, you'll get a laugh about this. Mike had a hard time getting through that meal. The prawns were fresh, almost too fresh, to the point of not being as done as we might have liked them. We had abalone. We had fried white fish. The fish came whole with its mouth open and the fins sticking out, deep fried. We had a dessert that had bean curd in it. Mike really had a hard time with that. But all in all, it was interesting, and we in fact did enjoy it. The next day, which was Saturday, we had all day in Singapore because we didn't have a flight out until 11 o'clock that night, but we did have use of our room. As opposed to Fiji, the day use in Singapore is complimentary because there are so many hotels in Singapore that if you don't get it from one, they know that you'll go someplace else to get it. We did some shopping. We rested a little bit, just tried to catch up.
Took a taxi to Chinatown.
We did. We went down to Chinatown. We took a cab down there and walked around down there in the streets. That was kind of fun, just to see the old stuff that was going on down there. From here, this night, we fly to Perth. And I guess this
Well,
is
tell
the
them about when we got to the airport, we had to check the baggage.
Oh, yeah, we went an hour early to the airport because we did have to send a bag unaccompanied. We sent that old white Samsonite one, which we bought a leather, or a strap for, a luggage strap, so it wouldn't come open. We shipped it air cargo. They thought it might be in Melbourne by the time we got back. It cost us $40 US to send it.
Which was 75% less than if we had sent it as excess baggage on the flight that we were on.
With us. So we didn't know whether we were ever going to see it again. It had our winter coats and stuff in it. But we made it. We had a drink in the airport in Singapore. It is the third largest airport in the world. Magnificent, still building, clean, squeaky clean and beautiful. From here we're on to Perth, and I guess we're going to have to put the rest of this trip on on another tape for you, which we
Yeah.
will start tomorrow.
So, so long from Australia. This is January the 28th, and